You probably think of war as something ancient, something that has always been with us. Tribes clashing over territory, armies marching across plains, violence baked into human nature from the very beginning. But here's the problem with that assumption. For the first 200,000 years of human existence, the archaeological record is almost completely silent on organized violence. No mass graves, no fortified settlements, no weapons designed specifically to kill other humans. Just people, moving across landscapes, hunting, gathering, surviving, which raises a question that changes everything. If war is natural, why did it take us so long to start? Start with what the bones actually tell us. Forensic anthropologists can read violence in skeletal remains the way a mechanic reads an engine. Certain fracture patterns, certain blade marks on bone, certain skull trauma, these are the signatures of deliberate killing. And when researchers systematically analyzed thousands of specimens from the Paleolithic period, what they found surprised almost everyone. Violence existed, it always has. Interpersonal conflict, one human killing another, shows up in the record as far back as 430,000 years ago. A skull from Atapuerca in Spain carries two overlapping blows to the same spot, the kind of strike pattern that happens when someone finishes what they started. But that is not war. War is something specific. It requires organization. It requires a group decision to send people out to kill another group. It requires the idea that those people over there are different enough from us to justify their deaths. And that idea took an extraordinarily long time to develop. The earliest solid evidence of organized group violence dates to around 10,000 years ago, a site called Nataruk in Kenya. Researchers found the remains of at least 27 people, men, women, children, killed in what appears to be a deliberate massacre. Bound wrists, blunt force trauma, obsidian blades embedded in skulls, no burial, left exactly where they fell. 10,000 years ago, not 200,000, not 100,000. So what happened at 10,000 years ago that didn't exist before? Agriculture. This is the answer that keeps emerging from the data no matter how many times researchers approach it from a different angle. Before farming, humans were mobile. If resources ran low, you moved. If another group was near your hunting ground, you gave them space or you traded with them. The land didn't belong to anyone because you couldn't hold it, you could only use it. Farming changed the logic of existence at the most fundamental level. When you plant a field, you are making a bet on a specific piece of ground. You are investing months of labor into soil you cannot take with you. You are building a granary, a storehouse, a surplus. And a surplus is something that can be taken. For the first time in human history, you had something worth killing for and something worth dying to protect. Researchers studying the transition to agriculture across multiple continents have found the same pattern everywhere. Mobile hunter-gatherer populations show low rates of violent trauma in their skeletal remains, typically around 2 to 3%. Early agricultural populations from the same regions show rates of violent trauma that jump to 10, 15, sometimes 30%. The plow didn't just change how we ate, it changed how dangerous we became to each other. But agriculture alone doesn't explain everything, because farming created something else alongside surplus. It created hierarchy. Hunter-gatherer societies are remarkably flat. When researchers study the few remaining forager groups today, what they find consistently is that status is fluid, leadership is temporary, and accumulation is actively discouraged. If one person in the group starts hoarding resources, the group applies social pressure until they stop. Anthropologists call this reverse dominance hierarchy, the many keeping the powerful few in check. Farming dismantled that system. When one family owns the best land, or controls the granary, or has enough surplus to feed laborers through the winter, hierarchy stops being temporary. It calcifies. And hierarchy creates the conditions for war in a way that egalitarian societies simply don't. Because now you have leaders who benefit from conflict. Chiefs and kings whose power grows with conquest. Men who can send other men to die and absorb the rewards of victory without absorbing the risk. The first armies weren't volunteers. They were the inevitable product of a social structure that had stopped distributing power evenly. There is a darker layer still. Language made war possible in a way that no other development could. Humans are the only species capable of convincing strangers to die for an abstraction. A wolf pack will fight over territory. A chimpanzee group will raid and kill rivals. But they do this for immediate, tangible reasons: food, mates, space. They cannot be told that the enemy tribe is cursed by the gods, that their land was promised to your people by a divine authority, that dying in this battle guarantees reward in an afterlife. We can. And once we could, the scale of violence that became possible had no upper limit. The first wars were not fought over food or water in the way we imagine. They were fought over stories, over which group's version of the world was correct, over who had the right to exist in a particular valley because of what their ancestors had been promised by forces no one had ever seen. This is not ancient history. This is the mechanism behind almost every large-scale conflict in recorded human experience. So when did humans start killing each other? Always, in the small ways, one person, a dispute, a moment of rage that left a mark on bone. But war, organized, justified, ideological violence against a group defined as other, that began roughly when we stopped moving.
When we put roots in the ground and built walls around what grew there.
When we invented the concept of mine and yours and ours, and decided that the difference was worth blood. The bones at Nataruk are 10,000 years old. Agriculture in that region began around 10,000 years ago. The timing is not a coincidence. You are the descendant of people who survived both sides of that transition, who lived through the shift from a world where violence was personal and rare to a world where it could be organized, scaled, and justified by language. That capacity to organize violence around an idea is the same capacity that built every civilization you have ever lived inside. The first war wasn't fought by monsters. It was fought by farmers.